I wish to move to lesson 4. And so far, we have looked at the introduction of phonetics. We have looked at the manner of articulation, how consonant sounds are articulated. I said later we shall look at how vowel sounds are articulated, how they are produced. So we have looked at manner of articulation, place of articulation, and now our next lesson we are looking at airstream mechanisms, also known as initiation. Airstream mechanisms, also known as initiation. And it's important for us to understand what are airstream mechanisms. What does the terminology initiation mean? So let's begin the lesson by defining airstream mechanisms. At least I know you have an idea that airstream has to deal with air. So airstream mechanisms are the deliberate airflows that are used in the articulation of human speech sounds. Airstream mechanisms are the deliberate airflows that are used in the articulation of human speech sounds. Simply put, it is the creation of airflow in the vocal tract. We have already looked at the vocal tract in our introductory lecture. Then another important terminology that we shall be using a lot is initiator. An initiator is any organ that creates airflow. These are basically three which we shall be looking at. The lungs, the ribs, the glottis, also known as the vocal folds, and the tongue. Then we have initiation. Initiation simply means the production of airflow. Remember, we said earlier that about half of the organs in our body are used in the production of speech sounds. And the lungs play an important role in regulating the amount of air flowing in and moving out. So at length, I would like us to focus on airstream mechanisms that enhance, that help us in the production of speech sounds. The production of speech sounds involves the movement of an airstream, air flowing. Whenever we are articulating any words, there must be a flow of air. Now, most speech sounds are produced by pushing air from the lungs out of the body through either the mouth or the nose. Remember, we talked about the oral cavity where the mouth is involved, and we talked about the nasal cavity where the nose is involved. There's a diagram that we looked at in our first lecture. I'd like you to look at it again. Now, for the production of speech sounds, the organs involved in their production must be configured in a particular manner, thus influencing the flow of air, either again through the oral cavity, the mouth, or the nasal cavity, the nose. So two things are important here. The configuration of organs, that when we are articulating these sounds, the organs involved must be articulated in a particular way. They must be configured in a particular way. They must be positioned in a particular way, such that when you are saying one sound and saying another sound that make use of different organs, then those organs are positioned in a particular way. And number two, what is of importance is the flow of airstream. I also wish to remind you that earlier on we said that in order for us to produce sounds, there must be sufficient flow of air in the lungs. Now, sounds are described according to the airstream mechanisms and airstream flows. The sounds we produce in our different languages that we speak are actually categorized according to the airstream mechanisms that are used to produce them. Now we have 3 airstream mechanisms that are used in the production of sounds, speech sounds. These are namely the pulmonic airstream mechanism, the glottalic airstream mechanism, and the Velorek airstream mechanism. Each of these airstream mechanisms is named according to the initiation organ. That is, which organ initiates it. Each airstream, as I've said, is named after the organ that initiates it. And starting with the pulmonic airstream mechanism, this airstream mechanism is initiated in the lungs. Glottalic airstream mechanism is initiated in the glottis. And the Velorek airstream mechanism is initiated by the tongue. We are going to look at each one of these and see how these influence our production of sounds. And we start with the pulmonic. We start with the pulmonic airstream mechanism. It is also referred to as the universal mechanism. Now, this mechanism occurs when the muscles move the walls of the lungs, pushing out the flow of air that is utilized in speech. So we have air, we have muscles that are involved. When the muscles move to the walls of the lungs, then we have air being pushed out. Now, pulmonic airstream mechanisms can be divided into 2. We have aggressive pulmonic airstream mechanism, and we also have ingressive airstream mechanism. Now, it is the basis of most human speech sounds that almost 80% of the consonants and all the vowels make use of the pulmonic airstream. So majority of the sounds that we produce make use of the pulmonic airstream mechanism. Let's look at each of these. We begin with the ingressive pulmonic airstream. Now, the airstream flows inwards through the nose and mouth. Now, this happens when the diaphragm gets raised by muscular action, causing the lungs to contract. So there are 2 important things that happen here. That when there's an airstream, the air is flowing through the nose and the mouth, the diaphragm is raised. We have muscular action causing the lungs to contract. The diaphragm is raised, the lungs contract, forcing the air out of the lungs, up the trachea, through the vocal folds, and out of the body through the nasal or oral activity. So the airflow is pushed out. And this only happens when we have the diaphragm get raised. There's there's muscle action. The muscles contract. When the muscles cause the lungs to contract. When the lungs contract, of course, this helps to push out the air out of the lungs through the trachea, and the air can either flow out of the nose or out of the nasal cavity or the oral cavity. So ingressive pulmonic airstream, the air is flowing in and then pushed out. Then we have aggressive pulmonic airstream. This takes place when the diaphragm gets lowered by muscular action. It causes an increase in the lungs' capacity, and the air is drawn into the body. So whatever air that is inhaled between the lips, the inhaled air passes through the lips, through the oral cavity, down the trachea, through the oral folds of the lungs. The only sound that is produced in such a way is the inhaled sigh. So I hope you see the difference. What comes out clearly is that the muscles, the muscular action will either make the lung capacity of air contract in aggressive, or make it to increase their capacity of air that is getting in. So those are the two types of pulmonic airstream. Then we have glottalic airstream mechanism. As we said, that this is the initiator is the glottis, the organ that is involved in the initiation is the glottis. Now the airstream mechanism is set in motion by the closed glottis. As the glottis is closed, the air is pushed out. In the pharyngeal laryngeal cavity, I hope you remember the cavities that I showed you in the diagram of the nasal cavity, the oral cavity, and the pharyngeal cavity. So this action now is taking place in the pharyngeal laryngeal cavity. So the glottis closes up, the air is pushed into the pharyngeal laryngeal cavity, and this results in two types of glottalic airstream mechanism. We have the ingressive glottalic mechanism and aggressive glottalic mechanism. In the ingressive glottalic mechanism, the sounds produced here are known as implosives. So here in the ingressive, we have the glottis moving down. There's a downward movement of the glottis. This causes a decrease in air pressure at the top of the trachea and oral cavity, which is forced out through the oral or the nasal cavity. We have some sounds here that are produced in this manner. These are D, B, G, H, as in house. So B for balloon, D for dog, H for house. So the downward movement of the glottis causes a decrease in air pressure at the top of the trachea and the oral cavity, and so forcing out these sounds. Under glottalic, we also have the egressive glottalic mechanism. How does this occur? This occurs when the air in the trachea and oral cavity is pushed with force out of the mouth or nasal cavities. So here the air is pushed out. Sounds produced in this way are all unvoiced or voiceless, and we will say that they are heavily aspirated. As we move on with this unit, we shall be able to find out what we call voiced or voiceless. So aggressive sounds produced under the aggressive glottalic mechanism are also called ejectives. And on our screen, we have examples of these ejectives. We have P in people, T in talk, K in keg, K in cat, and K in queen. All these sounds you will notice are voiceless. The third airstream mechanism is the Velorek or the lingual airstream mechanism. Now, remember we have looked at two types of airstream mechanism so far, the pulmonic and the glottalic. Now, we look at the third one, that is the Velorek, or also called the lingual airstream. Now, the term lingual is drawn from the word lingua, which is a Latin word, and it simply means the tongue. So here in the Velorek or in the Velorek or the lingual airstream mechanism, the initiator is the tongue. This airstream mechanism is initiated by the velum. We have the back of the tongue, which is also known as the radix, raised towards the velum to form a velic closure. The air utilized here is found in the oral cavity, and it is moved by being sucked in, hence ingressive. So in the production of sounds produced by this particular airstream mechanism, we have the velum that is involved. There is air in the oral cavity that is already there. When this air is moved by being sucked in, then we have an ingressive velaric sound being produced. Now, velaric sounds are not common in English, but they are common in the Xhosa language, Zulu, the Khoikhoi, the Bushman's language. Most of these found in the southern part of Africa, but we don't have this in English. Now, we also have the velaric ingression. Velaric ingression. Now, this happens when the airstream is initiated. Sorry, it's not imitated, but initiated by pushing the tip of the tongue to the front part of the oral cavity. Here we have the tip of the tongue being pushed to the front part of the oral cavity. We say that the oral cavity is the same as the mouth. So when this happens, the air at the front of the oral cavity is forced out of the body between tightly rounded lips by displacing the air at the front of the oral cavity. Let me repeat that. The air at the front of the oral cavity is forced out of the body between tightly rounded lips by displacing the air at the front of the oral cavity. So when this takes place, it leads to the production of a speech gesture called spitting. You notice spitting is in quotes. So the tip of the tongue is involved. We have, when the sound is being produced, the lips are tightly, they are rounded, they are very tight, and when displacement takes place, displacement of the air, then we have the production of the sound. So far, we have discussed 3 types of velaric airstream mechanisms. We have talked about the pulmonic mechanism, initiated in the lungs, glottal mechanism, initiated by the glottis, and velaric airstream mechanism that is initiated by the tongue. And at the beginning of this lesson, we said that in order for speech sounds to be produced, in order for speech sounds to be articulated, there must be a sufficient flow of airstream. If we don't have a sufficient flow of airstream, then we'll find that we are not in a position to articulate these words. So I believe that by now you should be in a position to know where consonant sounds are produced, how they are articulated, and the airstream mechanisms that come into play when we are producing these sounds. In a later lesson, we shall now focus on the particular sounds produced under each of these velaric mechanisms. But just have it in mind that the pulmonic mechanism and the velaric airstream mechanism play a big role in the production of English sounds, English speech sounds. I would like to leave you with an assignment. Describe in detail the pulmonic, glottalic, and velaric airstream mechanisms. Describe in detail the pulmonic, glottalic, and velaric airstream mechanisms. So with that, we come to the end of our lesson 4. I wish to thank you very much for having listened to me, and I trust that you took notes and you are going to do a lot of practice. This unit requires a lot of practice so that you understand it well. So thank you very much. Stay safe.
These televised lectures supplement our robust online learning going on our MKU online platform. You can view more on our televised lectures via our online platform. We are in a digital era, and Mount Kenya University knows this. The following are the steps to follow so as to complete your online application. Download the application form from the website www.mku.ac.ke. Attach copies of your academic certificates and ID. Pay the application fees via M-Pesa pay bill number 270988. Your ID is the account number. 2,000 shillings is the charge for a postgraduate. You can also deposit in the bank accounts provided on the website. Then email all the above to apply@mku.ac.ke.